So the first question I have for you, Pam, is who or what motivated you to go on such a journey and share such a personal story?
Okay, well, before we get serious, though, this has been my life. I have been inside a courthouse, and I'm not a felon, more times than you can imagine, and I could open up a bridal shop with all of the gowns I've worn. The rings, some of those I've hawked already, but I've been in this cycle. Well, I ended the cycle about 13 years ago. I'm proud to say that I've actually stayed away from the altar for 13 years. So because of that, I call myself a reformed multiple marrier. So don't ask me if I'm thinking about getting married again, because then I might ruin my reputation if I say yes. So I'm a little worried about that. But at any rate, multiple marriers, when I started doing some research, I didn't really find very much out there. I found this little definition that if you're married 3 times or more, in U.S. society, you're considered a multiple marrier. And there are only 3% of us in this country right now. I'm glad to say multiple marriage is on the decline. And why? Because people are waiting later to get married, and a lot of people are deciding they don't need to get married. They're doing the Stockholm marriage. I don't know if anybody have ever heard of the Stockholm marriage. But when I got married in 1971 at the ripe young age of 18, I was really on the cusp of traditional marriage and the modern day lifestyle. And I never would have done the Stockholm marriage, which was post-World War II, couples living in Stockholm who wanted to try before they bought, and their parents were living out in the rural areas, so they actually started living together in Stockholm. That's the first we know of people cohabitating. And it came to this country after my first and second marriage. It really wasn't until the 80s and even the 90s in some parts of this country where it was acceptable to be living with a boyfriend, girlfriend, and just not being married. So I know you want to ask me how I got started. How do multiple marriers get started?
Yeah, that's coming soon. But if you're in the mood of getting into it now, why
whatever.
Not? Yeah.
Whatever. Well, the answer is young. The multiple marriers that Linda, my editor here sitting in the front row, the best editor in the Bay Area, she helped me do some research, and we found 14 people. And I made the 15th, so she did some case studies based on the research. And every one of us had been married between the ages of 16 and 20 years old. I was right smack in the middle at 18, 16 and 20 years old. So that was kind of how we got started. It was actually a co-worker at one of my former companies. One of these ladies in the room might actually know her. She let it slip out that she was married to her 5th husband, and they had been married for almost 17 years. I didn't show the surprise and shock at the time she said it, but I was amazed because, again, here was a hyper-educated woman. She was actually a grandmother, a beautiful person. I just couldn't believe it. Well, I started thinking, now I finally met somebody who's been married and divorced more times than I have. I didn't know anyone in my circles. Well, we went out for drinks I said, I got to get to know this lady better. We went out for drinks a couple of weeks later, and after the second glass of Chardonnay, I said, I've got to tell you something. You and I are kindred spirits. I've actually been married and divorced 4 times. Less than you, but, who's counting? And she said, I never would have guessed that about you. I am shocked. And I said, well, that's what I thought about you. So here we are. So we commiserated that evening. We laughed. We actually shed a couple of tears because we'd both left on at least one occasion from an abusive relationship, she with a baby on her hip. So we said, we ought to write a book together. And we even came up with the title. And I couldn't get it out of my head, and I waited a couple of years. And I went back to her. I said, do you want to write this book with me? She said, I don't really have the time. It's not that I'm not interested, but I think you should go ahead and do it. I think the story needs to be told. I think you need to open up the discussion. If you promise me that you use the title of the book that we came up with, I said, what was that again? She said, Ring Exchange. And I had a good laugh over that. So she's actually mentioned in the first chapter of the book, not the real name, but a situation that she had. And I will say that Christian also was very, very supportive and said, I really think this is a good project for you. go do it. And I've never written anything before. I've written some poetry, some business letters and memos. That's about it. So I took a chance, but I thought the story needed to get out there.